Do you want to know the secret to being a good writer for a franchise that also wants to have representation? I'm going to say it right away, and we're just going to have to get straight into it from here. It's to write your characters as normal human beings living their lives instead of making the entire character about the representation you're trying to convey. I'm coming at you hot right off the bat, and I'm kind of sorry for that, but I'm not. There's no way to beat around this bush. Wait, ayo. I was recently playing Borderlands 4 as a character named Amon. He is a massive 7'3" giant, muscular, badass, and very Viking coded. By looking at him and playing the game, you wouldn't know that he was gay. I probably just shocked some of you by revealing this information, but that happens because the game never really presents it to you. To quote mainstream media, it was never in your face or forced upon you. The game never says, "Hey, Amon's gay. Look at all these rainbows. Look at how gay he acts. Oh, he has a soft-spoken voice. Wink, wink." Even the game itself doesn't go out of its way to tell you. It kind of hides it in the details. You, the audience, are meant to pick up this collectible, and if you're not the kind of player who listens and picks up collectibles or pay attention to dialogue in these non-cutscene games, then you definitely have no idea who this man is. Amon's background is brutal, as most heroes are. He was raised by religious fanatics who worship these powerful alien prisons named the Vault, and one day, his people decided to open it up in a religious ritual. What they didn't know is that on the other side there were not hidden riches, but rather a powerful alien being locked away for being a force too dangerous to be left alone in the universe. Everyone around him was killed, but Amon, he was the sole survivor of his people, something he carries with him heavily. What's so funny about this background is that much like his sexuality or his hobby for poetry, it's something you wouldn't know about Amon just playing the game by its core self. These are dialogues and extra stories that you get from doing side quests and listening to audio logs scattered across the game called echo logs. I don't know for sure how many times Malcolm is mentioned in the game, but it is so little that any time he was mentioned, I sat up and paid attention a little bit more.
I broke off a piece of the stone. Forgive me, Malcolm. I wanted to keep a part of you with me, and I'm not sure how long I'll be gone. But that's why I'm recording this, so at least a part of me won't miss the important days. The solstice. You and my sister would fight about who would get to host. You never won, bless her, but your desserts were the better. Oh, and your birthday. You never wanted anything. I could never find a gift that was worthy of you. But I tried. I really did try. I'll pay those monsters back, Malcolm. One by one. Goodbye, love.
Did you catch that? The very last line, "Goodbye, love." That's all we get from him. That's all we know about Amon and his past. That's all we know about Malcolm. Just as a friendly reminder, this is of one, maybe 3 times he mentions Malcolm in the entirety of the game. A game that probably takes you about 30 hours to complete just the story, 50 to complete all the side quests, and about 100 if you're looking to complete everything in it with a single character. All of this to say is that you only know that Amon is gay if you care enough to discover more about this character in this universe. Otherwise, you're kind of just left playing a looter shooter, playing as this big Viking dude and having a great time. So what is good representation versus inadequate representation? It's a loaded question that makes you feel like you're going to step on a landmine any second and you get it wrong. But I think what I have to say is pretty universally understood. Right away, let's make some things clear. Flags, colors, emblems, discounts, or whatever a game or company adds are not good representation. That is called showboating. It says, "Oh, look, we'd like you guys too. Come give us your money, please." And I'll tell you something right now. I have never been a fan of Hispanic Heritage Month and the cosmetics it offers, but I do like Octane from Apex Legends or Dominant Santiago from Gears of War. And you know what? Let me poke the bear a little bit more. Let me speak to other communities. If you're a part of a community and I'm about to relate to you, please let me know down below about how much this stuff irks you as much as it irks me. Alright, so here we go. Did you appreciate Halo's emblems and armor colors during Black History Month? Or are you more of a fan of having strong characters that represent your community better? Characters like Sergeant Johnson or the Coal Train? They're far more memorable than any emblem or color that can be handed out by a company during your quote-unquote month. During AAIP month, did you feel more represented by Microsoft highlighting the presence of Asians or Pacific Islanders in media, or do you prefer relating to them? Someone like Glenn from The Walking Dead or Jason Momoa in anything at all. Japanese fans love the Ghost of Tsushima, and it's no surprise that the game is just pure sauce. To my 2 women viewers, do you like that during Women's History Month there isn't really anything about your history? Companies just say that you guys matter? Why don't companies just write actual good female protagonists? Why don't clothing companies make clothes that women actually want to wear or feel comfortable wearing? This is my last one, I promise. But during Pride, are my LGBTQ plus fans happy that companies stick a rainbow sticker onto something and sell it to you for the same price or more? Or would you rather prefer a better representation in media, such as in the Last of Us TV show? I know most of you saw that episode and probably felt something from it, because that's what good representation looks like. I'm starting to drift into a whole other topic. I'm really starting to harp on commercial representation, but I think you're seeing exactly what I'm trying to get at. It's all fake. Fortune-making opportunities. That's representation for the sake of making money, and it's pitiful. If writers, companies, or creators truly care about genuine representation, then they should strive to achieve it. Make it real. Good representation is kind of like a you know it when you see it type of deal, but I hate that kind of description. A good friend of mine and I were recently talking about breakups over a Chili's Triple Dipper, because it's the #1 restaurant in America, and he said one of the smartest things I've ever heard come out of his filthy mouth. The absence of being terrible is better than being terrible and trying to be good. To translate his wisdom and put it into more understandable terms, he is essentially saying it's better to not eat a bad meal than to eat a bad meal that is trying to be good. In terms of representation, I share the exact same sentiment. The absence of bad representation is better than trying to force good representation. I would much rather there not be any attempts at representation than for it to be poorly done. Representation is far more nuanced than sexuality. It's about a million things that are outside of society's status quo, and that is not the same in every culture. What is bold and brave in American media may be considered normal in Europe or extremist in Saudi Arabia. For example, a character such as Amon being gay is whoa, he's gay in America? Okay, so in Europe, and ban this game in Saudi Arabia. Get with me? Allow me to show you good forms of representation, reinforce what makes them effective, and explore how we as a society can continue to build upon them. Let's list a variety of characters who serve as representation and see if you can guess them all. If you want, pause the video, make a guess in the comments as to what each of them say and represent, and then come back and see if you're right or wrong. Here are my 6 picks. Number 1. Judy Alvarez from Cyberpunk 2077. Number 2, Gregory House from House MD. Number 3, Kratos from God of War 2018. Number 4, Miles Morales from the Spider-Verse films and from his comics. Number 5, Walter White from Breaking Bad. Number 6, Lee from The Walking Dead games. Number 1, let's start with Judy Alvarez from Cyberpunk 2077 and what her character actually does for representation, both as a lesbian and as a Hispanic woman. Judy brings intelligence, loyalty, and genuine emotional depth into the story. When you first meet her, she comes across as this mysterious, razor-sharp brain dance tech with editing skills most people in Night City can only dream of. From there, her story immediately hits a tragic note. She loses Evelyn, someone who has both been her closest friend and, depending on how you interpret their history, her lover. Judy spends the rest of her arc trying to pick up the pieces, with your help, and channeling that grief into something like justice. What's important is that Judy's sexuality isn't performative or quote-unquote in your face. You only see her romantic side if you're playing as female V. Otherwise, her queerness shows up in the same natural way anyone's love and heartbreak show up in real life. Through the pain of losing Evelyn, through regret, and through the quiet way she still holds on to her memory. It doesn't feel forced, it feels human. It mirrors your own character's journey with Jackie. Judy loves someone, she lost them. She's trying to figure out how to live with that. As for her being Hispanic, the game treats it with the same ground of subtlety. It becomes relevant if you choose to explore her past, her childhood, her family, the small town she grew up in. Otherwise, it isn't turned into a stereotype or a talking point. Judy's Hispanic because some people are Hispanic. That's it, it's not a gimmick. It's a part of who she is. Now, if you do play as female V, Judy becomes a potential romantic partner. And here's the thing, What she brings to the relationship is exactly what you'd look for in a real person. She's tough but funny, she gives good advice, but also needs help sorting out her own emotions. She's fiercely independent, but you become a bright spot in her life, and depending on how you play the endings out, her reaction feels painfully real. She might be devastated and unable to move on. She might leave Night City altogether. She might accept your choice and quietly wonder what could have been. And in the Phantom Liberty ending, things get even more grounded. Judy tells you that she mourned you because everyone thought you were dead. When you vanished into the 2-year coma, she eventually moved on, met someone new, and moved to the East Coast, and now she's married. It's one of the most realistic, bittersweet outcomes in the game. Life didn't freeze because the protagonist disappeared. Judy kept living. That's the rub. That's the beauty of Judy Alvarez. She's not representation for representation's sake. She's a fully realized person who believes and feels as real as anyone you've ever met in your life. Her queerness matters, her heritage matters, but neither of those elements define her. What defines her is her humanity, her grief, her loyalty, her humor, her hope, and the profound, genuine connection she can form with V. Judy is easily one of the most thoughtful and emotionally honest characters in modern gaming. If you haven't played through her story at least once, you're missing out on one of Cyberpunk 2077's strongest pieces of storytelling. Number 2, everyone's favorite misanthropic medical genius, Dr. Gregory House from House MD. He's so iconic that my favorite Magic Gathering YouTuber, Quips and Guac, even built an entire commander deck around him. House is one of the coldest, sharpest characters ever written for television. His abrasive personality paired with a mind that can cut through medical mysteries like butter makes him one of those rare figures you love to hate and hate to love. On the surface, he's just a snarky, blue-eyed white guy with a cane, but what does that actually represent? Gregory House has a physical disability, a necrotic infarction destroying the muscle in his right thigh. A surgery he never wanted made things worse, leaving him in a constant debilitating pain. That pain leads to addiction, and this is where the character becomes morally complicated. House genuinely needs painkillers to function, but he's also addicted to them. He saves lives on a weekly basis, yet he's slowly destroying his own and pushing away everyone who cares about him. He's a doctor who heals others while writing himself stronger and stronger prescriptions just to keep standing. It's messy, but it's brilliant. House turns his disability into both his greatest vulnerability and his greatest strength. People underestimate him constantly. He limps, he winces, he's irritable, he looks like someone who should be benched. And then, in 95% of episodes, he cracks the impossible case. He cures the incurable. He's the guy who sees what no one else can because he's learned to see the world sideways, through pain, through doubt, and irony. His disability doesn't just shape his body, it shapes his worldview. House's morality is famously ruthless and logical, but it's also deeply personal. He tests with people's ethics, challenges their assumptions, and tears down their illusions, and then the story turns around and forces him to face those exact same moral standards. He is constantly crushed, humbled, rebuilt, and exposed to the very code he weaponized. House represents more than one group. He represents with people who live with disabilities and are underestimated because of them. He resonates with people whose intelligence isolates them, those who they're told are too much, too weird, or too abrasive. And he resonates with the morally complicated among us, the people who don't fit in clearly into hero, villain, saint, or sinner. And this is where representation becomes a broader conversation. Representation isn't just about ethnicity or sexuality, it's about reflecting the full spectrum of the human experience. Pain, brilliance, self-destruction, resilience. Most people don't go looking for representation because they see themselves everywhere by default. But for anyone who uses a cane, anyone whose disability has made others minimize them, anyone who has felt both powerful and broken at the same time, House is their guy. He is proof that stories can show us who we are, not just the idealized forms, but in all contradictions. At the end of the day, that's what representation is supposed to do. Hold up a mirror to the parts of ourselves we don't always get to see on screen. Number 3. Kratos is everything modern sequels wish they could deliver, and then some. Where games like Halo 4 attempt to humanize their legendary protagonists, God of War cracked Kratos right open. It gave us a raw, unfiltered look at masculinity, grief, and the impossible task of being both a warrior and a nurturing, emotionally present single father. This is the same man who once ripped through the Greek pantheon like it was a charcuterie board. Prosciutto, olives, Zeus, all sliced clean. And now he's standing in a cabin in Midgard, trying to teach his son how to hunt, how to control his anger, how to grieve without collapsing. When Artorias and Kratos say,
"I'm sorry,"
Do not be sorry. Be better.
It hits like a thunderbolt because we know exactly who he used to be. The man who once solved every problem with violence is now trying to teach a boy how not to become just like him. Kratos' evolution is meaningful because it embodies a truth about masculinity that rarely gets portrayed well. Being strong doesn't mean being unfeeling. Being a father doesn't negate being a warrior. In fact, the emotional intelligence Kratos develops, his restraint, his patience, his deliberate choices, require a different kind of strength than any other Greek god ever demanded of him. He represents the idea that you can be powerful and gentle, stoic and caring, disciplined and vulnerable. He's proof that masculinity isn't a single lane. It's a spectrum, responsibilities that include guidance, empathy, stability, and love. Now, a super quick tangent, because I know someone will bring it up. This is exactly why Master Chief's character arc in Halo 4 and 5 didn't land for a lot of people. It's not that you can't take a one-worded answer badass and turn him into an emotionally aware soldier. It's that Chief's development feels inconsistent. There's no build-up, no transitional moment, no emotional scaffolding. Kratos has Alvarez, years of regret, and a lifetime of consequences pushing him into fatherhood and introspection. Chief, on the other hand, effectively goes to sleep as one character and wakes up as an entirely different one. To put it more into perspective, the events of Halo 1 through 3 take place in less than a year. Chief loses friends, faces extinction-level threats, watches the entire galaxy teeter on collapse, and barely cracks any emotionality. Then he wakes up 5 years later and suddenly he's unpacking trauma like he's been in therapy off screen. His biggest character shift happens not during the war that shaped him, but during a 4-day in-universe period that wakes him up from a nap. That's why it feels off. It's not the idea of humanizing him, it's the pacing. Kratos, by contrast, earns every inch of his growth. His development is slow, painful, and rooted in the story we've lived with him. His past defines him, torments him, humbles him, and ultimately shapes the kind of father he's trying to be. And that's why he stands out as representation, not in the usual identity politics sense, but in the sense of representing a version of masculinity we rarely see in games. Kratos shows men can be fierce without being cruel, stoic without being closed off, and emotionally vulnerable without losing any ounce of our strength. For number 4, we have Miles Morales, a character whose representation is often summarized in the simplest possible terms. He's biracial. He's half black, half Puerto Rican, born and raised in Brooklyn. But that simplicity hides the depth of what he's actually representing. For anyone unfamiliar with the comics, Miles Morales is Spider-Man. In some universes, he's the Spider-Man. In others, he shares the role alongside Peter Parker as a fellow web-slinger protecting New York. But no matter the version, Miles is always rooted in his cultural identity, not as an accessory, but as part of the foundation of who he is. Depending on the comic, movie, or game experience, his heritage is expressed differently, but always authentically. Sometimes it's loud, shown through language, food, music, and his relationship with his community. Sometimes it's subtle, embedded in his values, the ways he navigates friendships, or how he responds to responsibility and grief. Depending on the run, his artistic side comes from his father's influence and his neighborhood's creative energy. His rhythm, style, and sense of self draws deeply from the Black and Puerto Rican communities that raised him. It's a cultural blend, an actual living tapestry that becomes representation not because it's labeled as such, but because it feels real. And Miles contributes something equally important. He expands what Spider-Man can be. The Spider-Verse is famously eclectic. We have Spider-Woman, Spider-Ham, Spider-Horse, Spider-Noir, Spider-Robots, and now Gwen Stacy, who was arguably becoming one of the most popular modern superheroes in her own right. For as long as there's been Spider-Man, Spider-Man has never been a single person or even a single identity. It's a role, a legacy, a mask that anyone can wear so long as they're willing to face the responsibility that comes with it. Miles embodies that philosophy perfectly. He isn't a diversity checkbook. He is proof that Spider-Man's core story about courage, loss, hope, and doing the right thing transcends one person or one background. His culture isn't pasted onto the character, it's interwoven with the story, shaping his perspective, his relationships, and even the city around him. Miles is representation done right, not because the story makes a big show of it, but because it treats his identity as something natural, meaningful, and essential to who he is. For number 5, let's talk about the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's talk about Walter White from Breaking Bad. On the surface, some of my most socially conscious friends would argue there's nothing here to count as quote-unquote representation. but I completely disagree. Bryan Cranston's portrayal of Walter White isn't just a product of Vince Gilligan's phenomenal world building. It's also one of the most compelling depictions of a middle-class American crushed by a failing healthcare system. Walt starts as a high school chemistry teacher who everyone overlooks. He's a man past his prime, someone who once stood at the edge of creating one of the most valuable scientific companies in the world, only to end up with nothing but regret. His marriage is strained, his in-laws don't respect him, his teenage son requires special care and attention due to cerebral palsy, and then, on top of all that, Walt is diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, a disease that in the United States remains one of the leading causes of bankruptcy and death simply because people cannot afford treatment. And so this story begins. Walter White turns to crime to pay medical bills. But the reason the show resonates so profoundly throughout the 2010s is because of what Walter White represents. He's the avatar of the middle-aged, middle-class father who has quietly accepted every blow life has dealt him. He is underpaid, undervalued, and deeply afraid of leaving his family with nothing. You don't have to psychoanalyze him to understand why he struck a nerve. Millions of people in this country saw a version of themselves in Walter White's desperation. This is why representation isn't limited just to race, gender, or sexuality. Representation is about people being seen, their struggles depicted honestly, their fears articulated out loud. Walter White embodies the man who feels he has given everything and has received nothing in return. He represents those crushed by medical debt, those who feel their talents were wasted, those who believe they were on the verge of greatness only to watch life pass them by. But he also represents something darker. Walt is a cautionary tale of how pride, resentment, and greed can hollow a man out from the inside. Everything he builds, he destroys. Everyone he claims to love, he pushes away. His descent is not just a plot, it's a warning, one that stuck with viewers because it felt uncomfortably real. Even the people who love you will turn their backs on you if you cannot control the worst parts of yourself. Walter White is representation in its rawest form. A man who is both victim and villain, both sympathetic and monstrous. A mirror held up to the American middle class, showing them not just who they could be, but who they already are. And finally, number 6. My final short analysis is on Lee Everett from Telltale's The Walking Dead. Lee is a history professor convicted of murdering a state senator, the man he caught sleeping with his wife. When we first meet Lee, he's sitting in the back of a police car, being transported to prison. The camera frames him the way society has always framed a black man. In handcuffs, in trouble, being driven towards a future already decided for him. And then, the apocalypse hits. The car crashes, the officer dies, and Lee crawls out into a world collapsing around him. He stumbles into a house where a young girl named Clementine is hiding alone in her treehouse. In that moment, Lee makes a choice that defines him. He doesn't leave her, he doesn't run. He takes responsibility for a child who isn't even his because he knows, deep down, what happens to people who are left behind. Without spoiling this game, and frankly one of my favorite stories told in video games ever, Lee becomes Clementine's protector, mentor, and eventually her father in every way that matters. What makes Lee remarkable is that he's written as a person first and a symbol second. Video games have a long history of flattening black male characters into stereotypes. Angry, dangerous, violent, emotionally closed off. Lee pushes against every one of those expectations. Throughout the story, he consistently exhibits strength without cruelty, intelligence without arrogance, and emotional composure without coldness. He chooses compassion even towards characters who treat him with racism or hostility. He solves problems through calm reasoning. He takes on the burden of parenthood in one of the most terrifying worlds imaginable. In other words, Lee Everett is not representation because he's a black protagonist in a major narrative game. He's representation because of how deeply and humanely he's written. He is allowed to be complex, caring, flawed, resilient, thoughtful, tender, and heroic. He is allowed to be a fully realized man. This is what representation looks like when it's done right. It's not loud, it's not performative, it doesn't point at itself and say, look, we did diversity. Instead, it trusts the audience to see Lee's humanity and through that to understand the significance of a black man portrayed with dignity, depth, and emotional truth. Lee Everett didn't just redefine a genre, he helped redefine what video game characters can be. A flawed man trying to do good in a dying world. Someone who becomes a father not by blood, but by choice. And in that, he represents something profoundly important. A vision of black masculinity grounded in compassion, responsibility, and hope. Moving into my conclusion, when representation is done right, it doesn't feel like representation at all. It doesn't feel like a political checkbox or a marketing strategy. It just feels like a story about people. People who think, feel, love, and grieve in ways that are honest. Good representation isn't the plot, it's an aspect of a character that shapes them, informs their decision, and deepens their humanity. It blends into the narrative so naturally that you forget you're being quote-unquote represented at all. And that's part of why representation has become such a hot topic in the cultural wars. When a commercial forces identity into a 10-second frame to sell a product, it feels strange and artificial, not because the identity is wrong, but because nobody introduces themselves in that way at all in real life. When you meet a waiter, they don't just list their ethnicity, their sexuality, or their illnesses. They just exist, and you interact with them as a whole person. When representation is shoved in unnaturally, it feels forced, even when the intention behind it is good. People forget that representation is really about seeing ourselves in media that we love, seeing pieces of our lives echoed back at us. The stories of people from small towns and big cities, people who take the bus, who work double shifts, who dream of becoming something better. People who clean tables, people who chase careers, who try to escape or embrace where they are or where they come from. People who feel too small for the world, or too big for the place they're stuck in. All of that is representation. Every one of us carries something worth reflecting in a story. Instead of focusing on bad representation, let's learn how to celebrate and encourage the good. The point isn't to be angry that representation exists, it's to talk honestly about how it could be done better. About how corporations sometimes use identity to sell us things that we don't need, creating noise instead of meaning. Real representation doesn't clutter our minds, it clears space for understanding. At the end of the day, all of us want to do is to be seen. And through videos like this, through conversations like this, we're going to show them exactly what we're looking for. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to watch and listen, to let me be seen for just a moment. Remember this, representation matters anywhere and everywhere we go. It belongs to all of us, not to just one individual group. I'll be leaving you with a poem written by Amon from Borderlands. This has been Pojeki, your guide through all things nerdy. Thanks for following along, and I really appreciate you. I can't wait to hear your story next. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. Thanks for watching. Peace.
There came a time when a stable boy, one filled with awe and wonder, grew to a man with sword in hand and tore the gods asunder. The vaults they long sought to defend laid bare unto his hand. Their riches fine, his pockets lined, yet his heart held more demands. The one-time stable boy struck out in search of demons more. For those who reign by death and pain he'd promised to his sword. When there were no more gods to kill, no lands left yet to free, he laid down his shield in grassy field, and the warrior he did weep.